Hey, I'm Vermont Edition producer Daniela Fierro. The podcast you're about to listen to has been edited for clarity and brevity. Enjoy.
We bring you an update on an ever-expanding story out of the Northeast Kingdom. Last month, a U.S. Border Patrol agent was shot and killed in Coventry during a routine traffic stop. 2 other people were shot as well. 1 died. Over the last few weeks, it's come to light that those 2 people and others were followers of a fringe ideology known as Zizianism. They are connected to multiple killings in multiple states. VTDigger reporter Peter D'Oria and his colleagues have been covering this story since the January 20th shooting in Coventry. Peter, welcome back to Vermont Edition.
Thanks so much for having me.
Peter, did you ever think a couple weeks ago that this was the story that was going to be taking up weeks of your time and bringing you on all of these different reporting journeys?
No, I did not. I think this is probably the weirdest or one of the weirdest stories that I've ever been involved in reporting on. I think after that initial incident, I wasn't even following it super closely. And then things got really weird and I started to follow it much more closely.
Yeah. Well, let's try to go through all of the steps in this zigzagging story. And let's start with the initial shooting in Vermont. I mean, it stood out because it involved a Border Patrol agent who was tragically killed during this traffic stop. Can you tell us a little bit more about this event?
Yeah. So I'm just going to throw a couple disclaimers ahead of time. The first is that a lot of the kind of exact specifics of that shooting on January 20th of last month are not clear. And it's like we don't have like a great picture of exactly what happened at that traffic stop that you mentioned. The other disclaimer that I did want to put out early on as well is that a lot of the people involved in this group that you mentioned, the Zizians as they're called, are transgender or appear to be transgender. Many of them seem to go by different names or have gone by different names at different times. Their pronouns are not exactly clear to us. And oftentimes it seems that the names they use sort of more colloquially or with friends are not the names that they used in court records. So I'm going to do my best.
Thank you.
So January 20th, a traffic stop in Northeast Kingdom of Coventry, Border Patrol agent David Malin pulled over a Toyota Prius with North Carolina plates. During this stop, according to court records, one of the occupants of this car, named in court records as Teresa Youngblood, opened fire. Other Border Patrol agents, potentially other law enforcement agents, were at the scene as well. Some shooting took place. David Malin was killed. Another occupant of the car, named in court documents as Felix Bockholt, who also may have used the name Ophelia, was also killed. A lot is murky. It's not exactly clear who fired the shot that killed Agent Malin. That's not been sort of spelled out specifically. Teresa Youngblood is currently in custody and has been hit with some charges related to that incident. Over the next few weeks, it kind of became clear just through reporting by news outlets and like court filings that these 2 people that were in the car had ties to sort of unspecified, kind of confusing ties to this. I hesitate to use the word network because it kind of implies like a degree of organization that may not be there. But this group of other people seeming to be kind of centered around this one individual named Jack Lasota, also known as Ziz, who wrote this blog that had something of a following, espousing some, I guess you could say, like fairly unusual ideologies.
Okay, so there was this initial crime, the shooting in Coventry. Ended up 2 people died, and it comes to light that one of the women who was charged in this shooting incident had ties to people of interest in other homicides in other states. What did you learn about those events?
Yeah, so the very surprising development. Turns out there was another killing, a couple of incidents actually, which resulted in, I believe, 2 deaths in California, in the Bay Area. The killing of a landlord who was the landlord of some of these people, including Lesota. They had also had ties to another double homicide in Pennsylvania, where a sort of older couple, the Zashkos or Zakos, were killed at their home in 2022. The landlord's death in California, Vallejo, California, took place just a few days before the Border Patrol stop, January 17th. The person who is in custody and has been charged with that killing applied for a marriage license with Teresa Youngblood, who is currently in custody, has been charged in relation to the killing of the Border Patrol agent in Vermont.
Wow.
It's very tangled.
Yes.
I'm still, I also get confused on sort of where all the ties are, and I think those are also still being kind of unraveled and untangled. I guess another disclaimer.
But one fact, it seems, is that the people who were involved in this shooting have had brushes with the law or been under investigation prior to this shooting. I mean, the 2 folks in Vermont were under surveillance by authorities for about a week prior to the shooting. Is that right?
Yes. They were staying in a hotel, and they had just sort of, as far as I understand it, kind of like freaked out some people. They were wearing all black. They were carrying guns. This is sort of like a theme that, we've seen talking to people who, observe these folks in Vermont or in other states or elsewhere. It seems like they tend to wear all black. They have, firearms. They keep themselves. And so they were this pair of people, Youngblood and Bachl, were sort of tooling around the Northeast Kingdom for about a week. And they probably not, I don't know exactly whether they knew this, but they were also sort of being just watched by law enforcement. Someone had tipped them off saying these people look suspicious.
Yeah.
They stayed at a hotel. They were looking at a property in the Northeast Kingdom in Wheelock, which we reported a few weeks ago. Not entirely clear what their designs for this property were, but this is this like very, very remote off-grid house in the middle of nowhere, basically.
That they were looking to purchase?
They were looking to purchase it. They apparently offered to pay in cash. And they sort of did this, I guess, self-guided tour of this property when a realtor couldn't meet them, and they, encountered some neighbors, and the neighbors also seemed to get a little freaked out. One of the other people who is now in custody as well used to live. This person's name is Michelle Zako or Zashko. Was listed as a resident in Coventry. Lived at a house there, perhaps a couple of years, maybe 21 to 23. Owns like a very small kind of undeveloped plot of land in Derby, Vermont. And so I think...
And that person is the child of the couple that was killed.
That's correct. Yeah. And Michelle Zako is now been named as a sort of person of interest in that homicide. So I think their designs in Vermont were sort of unclear beyond this property and what exactly they're hoping to do with this property. Just noting that they had some ties to the state, or some of them had some ties to the state. And I think, again, those are sort of becoming more clear over time.
And from Vermont, we traveled to Maryland, where there was a big arrest recently. What happened?
Yes. So on Sunday, 3 people, Michelle Zako, Jack Lesota, a.k.a. Ziz, and a third person named Daniel Blank, who appears to have lived with Michelle in Coventry for at least a little bit, were arrested in Frostburg, Maryland by Maryland State Police. It wasn't based on a warrant, which I think is interesting. They were, a landowner called 911 or called the police saying, hey, these people in these kind of unusual box trucks have been asking to camp on my property, which is in like a rural part of Maryland. And I think they look really suspicious, and I don't want them here. So sort of by, as far as I can tell, like pure chance, the authorities picked up some of these folks, 3 of these people, and they're now being held in Maryland.
Wow. It seems like there's a lot of different authorities involved in these cases. Who, as a reporter, who have you had to interact with beyond just say the Border Patrol involved in the initial shooting in Coventry?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, this spans 4, 5 states maybe at this point. We've been reaching out to court officials, trying to get records in pretty much, I think, all of these states, basically. The state police agencies are involved, Vermont State Police, Pennsylvania State Police related to the killing in Pennsylvania, Maryland State Police. The FBI, I believe, is sort of either taking the lead on this or coordinating here. We've been in touch with them to a certain degree. I know after Youngblood and Bachholt were looking at this property in Wheelock, the FBI kind of got involved and were asking to talk to realtors in the area. The Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms sort of sent out this alert after the Border Patrol officers' killing in January that they were looking for information about this Michelle Zako. She had seemingly bought the firearms that were used in that killing. There's just it's so confusing, and there's so many different connections. It's sort of hard to, flesh out this kind of narrative thrust of everything that's happened.
I've seen stories about this on NBC, Al Jazeera, the AP. What do you think it is about this story and these cases that has captured national attention?
I think it is because, to a large degree, for for whatever reasons, these young, and these are all people in their 20s and maybe early 30s, they just don't seem to have the profile of people that would get involved in some sort of multi-state violent activities. A lot of these people were excellent students, went to really prestigious places of learning, universities, graduated at the tops of their class, had really promising career prospects, so, interns at NASA or quantitative traders. One of the other things that I think a lot of media outlets have been really fascinated by, and if we kind of dig into this a little bit, just they had this very unusual ideology. One of the pieces of that has been of great interest to people is that they are all, many of them seem to be very strictly vegan. And I think that a lot of the attention seems to be maybe on the kind of ironies that seems to present, in that they, want to avoid the killing of animals, and yet have been linked to killings of people in multiple states.
Are there loose threads that still don't seem to connect, parts of the story that you will continue to follow, Peter?
Yeah, I think every time we write a story about this, I'm like, oh, this is going to be it for a while. This is going to calm down for a bit now, and then it never does. So I definitely think there's going to be more to this. There, as you mentioned, there was an arrest this on Sunday in Maryland. The 3 people that were arrested were hit with sort of state charges, fairly minor charges. Yesterday, we reported that one of these 3 people, Michelle Zako, had just been charged federally. I think we're waiting to see if more federal charges or charges in other states come out. I think waiting to see, for example, this killing in Pennsylvania, the double homicide. To my knowledge, law enforcement has not named a suspect or charged anyone in that killing. I think we're waiting to see sort of, who did it? Like, what's their connection to this? What's their connection? I just think a lot of these connections are still getting fleshed out, and they're all like very mysterious. What happened in the Border Patrol shooting? There's so much that just is still unclear at this point.
Peter D'Auria covers government accountability, human services, and healthcare for VTDigger. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your reporting on this story with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.